Today is Thursday, July 23rd, 2020. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Donald Trump, we tried to tell you, cancels the Republican National Convention in Jacksonville. Idiot. Coronavirus? Yeah, that's why. Speaking of that, his troops tear gas Portland's Wall of Moms, and the mayor last night will give you those details. A new poll shows that choosing a black woman to be Joe Biden's vice president could give him a boost with young voters and white women. We'll talk with the authors of that poll. Also, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has a few words to say to Congressman Ted Yoho, the one who called her out of her name and refused to apologize for it. Wait until you see what she said today on the House floor. Republicans keep cranking out anti-Trump ads. We'll show you the latest viral videos, including a new one from VoteVets. And Joe Biden releases his conversation with former President Barack Obama. Plus, Senator Patrick Leahy introduced a bill to restore the Voting Rights Act of 1965 in the name of Congressman John Lewis in the United States Senate. And Atlanta radio stations have banded together to get out the vote. Plus, former cast members of Survivor speaks out about diversity and inclusion on the show. And of course, crazy-ass white people. Why this white woman won't let a brother just deliver food? What is wrong with y'all? It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
All right, folks. Hashtag we tried to tell you. Donald Trump acted a complete ass against North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper, demanding that he green light the Republicans holding their convention in Charlotte, North Carolina in August. The governor said no because of coronavirus. So Trump says, we're leaving. They picked Jacksonville, Florida. Then what happened? Cases spiked in Florida. Now, idiot-in-chief had to announce this today.
This afternoon, my political team came to me and laid out our plans for the convention in Jacksonville, Florida. It's a place I love. I love that state. The drawings look absolutely beautiful. I never thought we could have something look so good so fast with everything going on. And everything was going well, a tremendous list of speakers, thousands of people wanting to be there, and I mean, in some cases, desperately be there. They wanted to attend, people making travel arrangements all over the country, they wanted to be there. The pageantry, the signs, the excitement were really, really top of the line. But I looked at my team and I said, the timing for this event is not right. It's just not right with what's happened recently, the flare-up in Florida. To have a big convention, it's not the right time. It's really something that, for me, I have to protect the American people. That's what I've always done. That's what I always will do. That's what I'm about. They said, sir, we can make this work very easily.
My panel, Dr. Greg Carr, Chair, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University, Reese Colbert, Black Women's Views, Erica Savage-Wilson, host Savage Politics Podcast. This dumbass ain't fooling nobody, Dr. Carr. All of a sudden, he didn't want to listen. He was so arrogant, and now he can't have his big parties. So it's like, sorry. And remember, they were just praising Ron DeSantis. They're doing a great job in Florida. And DeSantis wagging his finger at the media. Now cases are spiking left and right. The Jacksonville sheriff announced, I don't even have the people to protect folks at a convention. Now it's not going to happen. Oh.
Roland, I tell you, man, I'm glad, you know, one of our coping mechanisms is humor, and we have to cope. Donald Trump's coping mechanism in this pandemic is denial, and he is clearly not well. He's clearly mentally ill. He's deteriorating before our eyes. He's gone back before the cameras now with his daily briefings, with his breathless, sing-songy, out-of-breath moments. Well, you know, and he went from Charlotte to Jacksonville to oblivion. He's trailing Joe Biden by 13 points in Florida, and of course we know there's a Trump effect. There's some liars in that poll, but even the liars can't make that gap up. So we'll see. As Donald Trump might say, we'll see what happens.
Well, I just think it's hilarious. Erica, to sit here and watch this idiot stand there. This is on his watch. Coronavirus has exploded because this idiot sat there and mocked Joe Biden and others for wearing masks, did not lead when it comes to testing, praised Ron DeSantis back in May. Then all of a sudden, and anybody who understands coronavirus, your numbers don't kick in for at least 6 to 8 weeks when they reopen the state. Same thing in Texas. Greg Abbott, those idiot Republicans in Texas were fighting with Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner to have their state convention. And then when he announced it ain't going to happen at the George Brown Convention Center, they sued him, and a judge said, nope, you can't do it. No state conference. These Republicans are the ones who are leading these people to ignore mask mandates, to fight against the proper way to social distance, and now egg on this idiot's face after all the trash talking he did against North Carolina and his Democratic Governor, Roy Cooper.
Right, Roland, and I'm so glad that you ran us through all of those failed leadership moments, because these are the things that we're going to have to continue to keep before the American people, because we've seen that specifically in a political climate that moments sometimes have very short-lived histories. And so for people to understand that this is a mediocre person who would send children back to school with the certainty of death, to understand that this is a person who is sending federal agents to cities that are largely Black and brown bodies, that this, again, is another example of how he's weaponizing the current office that he's in right now. And I'm glad that you brought in the Republicans, because the obsequience of the Republicans has to be put before voters' face every day. It would be funny, but for the fact we have 147,000 people that have passed away due to coronavirus, and that we are nearing 4 million confirmed cases in the U.S. and being banned from several countries, specifically the European Union. So I think as those pieces collectively come together, that this is what voters and potential voters need to be reminded of every day, what's really on the ballot.
And look, Reese, they're getting exactly what they deserve. We have had an abdication of leadership by Donald Trump and his imps in his administration. They have attacked Dr. Anthony Fauci. They have attacked Joe Biden. They have attacked Governor Andrew Cuomo. They have attacked so many people, and 140,000 people are dead. We're seeing record cases every single day. And then they're just touting, oh, we're doing a great job. And the polls are disagreeing with them left and right, because people are seeing what happens when you do not know how to lead.
Yeah, and I think that this is really a survival tactic for Donald Trump, because he's seen these polling numbers out of Florida and they look really bad. So it's probably a good idea to not infect, to potentially kill off a large part of your base down in Florida. And so I think that this is all about his self-interest. It's not about putting the American public first. And I think it's him trying to walk back in the most minor way, this hole that he's dug himself into. Unfortunately, he has so many people that have bought into his propaganda and his delusions that it's going to be a lot harder to put this jack back in the box and get people on board with what we need, which is at least 95% of the country wearing masks at all times and social distancing.
Well, again, I want people out there to understand that coronavirus, I saw this tweet, Greg, and it said it best. Coronavirus is Trump's Vietnam.
I don't know, Roland. The reason I'm hesitating is because, as you said in earlier shows, Trump is trying to execute a variation of the 1968 Nixon playbook. He's running a complete white nationalist party campaign now. In fact, they should just stop saying GOP and call it WNP. They are the white nationalists. And, you know, this far out from November, with the post office clearly taking hits every day. I don't know if you've noticed the mail being slower and less, less reliable. With the attack against mail-in voting, there's really no way to predict, particularly as this thing fractures into states and localities, and even in places like Georgia, where the Deltas mounted a big mask-up campaign today. The governor of Georgia is still attacking the mayor of Atlanta. It's hard to say this far out. Roland, it's certainly going to be a quagmire, but they are banking on the fact that they can shrink the electorate enough to be able to rally their white nationalist base and somehow steal this election one more time. It seems like, as Reese said, this is their full-blown strategy now. Which is why
what has to happen here, Reese, this has to happen. And what I keep telling people, how do you outsmart them? What we should be focusing on right now is, what is the first day you can request your absentee ballot? What's the first day you can get that? We've got to be using all of our platforms telling our people, don't wait to the last second to get it and then mail it in. We should be, what's the first day? And then when that sucker comes in, mail it back. So the first thing, Reese, is, all right, when do you start, or what are the deadlines for registering to vote in November? One of the things that we're going to start doing is compiling that and start giving those dates. This is July right now, and start giving those dates. These are the deadlines. Don't wait for the last second. If you think your address has changed, fill out a new application so they can't sit here and play that game. And then once registration is over, now when you can start requesting your ballot and then getting that in. And so I don't want us, forget CP time, folks joking about that. I want us to be early, and all of a sudden they look up and go, what the hell was going on?
Absolutely. And I want to shout out vote.org, which is a Black woman owned and led organization that focuses on this very thing. We have to be talking about strategies at the individual level. Yes, we know that there is going to be massive voter suppression, but what are the individual steps that we can take to protect our vote as much as possible? And to your point, Roland, it involves being early in terms of requesting your ballot. It involves double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking that you are registered. It involves educating yourself in how to properly fill out your ballot so that they cannot use the absentee ballots as an excuse to surgically target voter suppression by throwing out these ballots. Make sure that you understand the rules for turning in your ballot, making sure that it has the proper signatures, make sure that it has everything filled out. We have to cross our T's and dot our I's because they are coming for our vote. So we have to be that much smarter about our strategies, about execution, about the timing, about following up with our vote. And if you can vote early, then sign up to go work the polls, because that's going to be a whole nother issue on voting day and in early voting that we're going to have to deal with. But yes, we individually can do something to make it as hard as possible for them to suppress our vote in the way that they want to.
And again, Erica, what you have to be proactive. The reality is you're not going to be seeing the typical campaigns we're used to, door-to-door campaigns. You're not going to see voter registration events taking place at concerts, taking place at major events, because there are not going to be any major events. We're already seeing it right now. I can tell you right now, don't be surprised if we're going to have distance learning, online school, so you can forget. And again, I know people don't like it, but guess what? All of those HBCU football classics, bye-bye. Homecomings, bye-bye. And so right now, people have to be understanding digital. And this was why, and look, I praise the Lord, because that's where the vision came from. But in 2017, when TV One canceled my show, I said, Tom Jones retiring in December 19, we've got to make sure that we have a vehicle that's reaching African Americans that's going to be in position in the 2020 election. And so that's why that was the whole strategy. I said when we launched in 2018, give us a whole year and a half to really build up. So once 2020 dropped, boom, we're ready to go. And that was the whole piece. And so now all these black groups out here and other black media, they're now scrambling, trying to figure out a digital strategy. And this is how we communicate and get the word out every single day. That was exactly the plan.
Yeah, and congratulations to you for moving ahead of the tide, Roland. And I'll just echo Dr. Carr here real quick and go ahead and put 5 on it at RMU Unfiltered Cash App right now to make sure this type of media continues to be elevated. And so, listen, we're at a very critical place. And so people have a decision to make about their platforms. They can continue to utilize their platforms to really in a way that does not draw attention to what is necessary at this time, which is people, as Reese talked about, having that whole mechanism of understanding voting by mail, absentee ballot, voting by home, however it is that a person calls that particular naming convention, we have got to be prepared. That is one thing that I've been talking about on my platform for at least a couple of years now is to number one, have a voting plan. Reese mentioned vote.org, which I love that organization. I love that whole platform because what it also provides is a COVID electoral hub so that people can see within their specific state all of the different changes that are happening in their state. It gives all that information that you talked about, Roland, which is knowing what your state's registration dates are, knowing all of those specific dates, and it updates hourly. So I echo Reese in talking about vote.org, and people need to get informed. You can even go ahead and register, and you can make application for your online ballot from that platform. But this is the time where people have to make decisions about what the rest of the year looks like. We still have 2020 census ongoing, and they have a big faith weekend rollout happening this weekend as well. So we need people to really be very honed in on what is the main thing. The main thing is ensuring that not only this occupant of the White House, but his vice president, all of those that are in his regime are fired effectively so we can begin about making COVID the public health crisis that it is, and then all the other issues as well.
Folks, let's talk about Portland, where Mayor Ted Wheeler was tear gassed by federal officers along with a large crowd of protesters last night after he tried for hours to calm angry activists demanding police reform from City Hall and calling for federal authorities to withdraw from his mostly liberal, mostly white city. Nightly protests have dominated downtown Portland for nearly 2 months after the murder of George Floyd. The wall of moms were joined by a wall of dads with leaf blowers to get rid of the tear gas. Also, Donald Trump threatened to send the same folks to Chicago. Mayor Lori Lightfoot said absolutely not. The U.S. attorney there brokered a compromise where the additional federal agents will not be on the streets, will be helping in other ways. We're also seeing right now, Erica, where Black Lives Matter and others are filing lawsuits in Chicago to ensure that those federal agents are not going to be using their power on the ground there as well. I'm going to pull up this story in just a second that speaks to that. This is from the Chicago Sun-Times. According to this story, a Black Lives Matter lawsuit asks federal court to rein in federal law officers Trump is sending to Chicago. And so, according to their story, that Black Lives Matter Chicago and other social justice groups filed a lawsuit on Thursday against federal law enforcement agencies seeking to prevent federal agents being deployed in Chicago by President Trump from harassing and detaining protesters.
Yeah, and again, I mean, this is why we need people to go ahead and begin to create a voting plan. This occupant, no matter what his stability or his condition is hell bent on everyone bowing to him. And he is willing to knock over whatever statues. He is willing to use the Constitution as his floor mat, as he has been doing since he was president-elect. Remember, we talked about last week that he is an emoluments president as well. And so I think that in this moment where people are seeing that it's not just Black and brown people that are being terrorized by law enforcement and federal agencies, which has been the history for this country, but now they're seeing this level of violence, this level of commitment to tyranny, this level of deconstructing the administrative state at all costs is now applicable to maybe some, even those Trump voters. And I think that as people look at this imagery, and it's really sad that the imagery has to be less melanated sometimes for people to really take to task and see how serious it is to use the Department of Homeland Security to weaponize and terrorize urban centers, as they are called, or largely Black and brown populated places, that people will have a real understanding that this is a president and a attorney general who find no shame and boldly proclaim that all must bow to what they believe to be this unilateral type of decision making and authority, who is, they say, the White House occupant.
Reese, here's a comment from Ainsley Pulley, a founder of Black Lives Matter Chicago. Anthony, go to my iPad. She told a crowd of about 150 demonstrators Thursday, this is according to the Chicago Sun-Times, quote, "We see what's happening in Portland. That was the first test case, and now it's coming here. This is not a threat. This is a promise that we will not back down. We are defending our rights to freedom of assembly and airing our grievances against this government, which are in the Constitution." What Donald Trump wants to do, according to Congressman Bobby Rush on the Joe Madison show yesterday, we didn't get a chance to play yesterday. I want to play the audio today, where he said Trump wants to instigate a race war. Trump wants the fight. Trump wants the tear gas. He wants to scare white people into saying, see, I'm the one who can get these people under control. I'm the one who can only protect you.
Are you going to play the clip, or you want me to respond?
No, you go ahead. You go ahead. We're setting the clip up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. And this is something that Senator Kamala Harris said, is that the biggest threat, one of the biggest threats to our national security is race and racism. And the Trump administration is using this reckoning that we have around the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and the Black Lives Matter movement to really execute their authoritarianism throughout the entire country. If we look at what's happening in Portland, if they will tear gas white soccer moms and white Navy veterans, then you know good and damn well what's in store for Black people. But the difference is that because there wasn't the kind of backlash and the uprising that there should have been for this authoritarianism, Chad Wolf, who's a former tennis player who must think he's in some sort of episode of Sicario or the trilogy of Sicario, is out there having people play G.I. Joe on the streets of Portland, and nobody's doing a damn thing about it. I shouldn't say nobody, but they're getting away with it, essentially, despite the protests, despite the legislation, despite the lawsuits. And this is just something that now, to your point, they're going to move over to these urban centers to antagonize and instigate and get the media back on, get their attention back on these streets and these urban centers to say to the white folks, hey, look at these big, bad Black people who are antagonizing or who are fighting with people who are in camouflage, who are supposedly there to protect. So this is all part of his authoritarianism. It's part of his white nationalist agenda, as Dr. Carr said. And it's a test run for just an increased dissension into lawlessness, not from the people of the United States, but from the Trump administration.
Greg Carr, we were to play this sound yesterday. This is Congressman Bobby Rush of Illinois speaking on the Joe Madison Show on Sirius XM Radio.
Is that good?
Let me ask you this and about something that is currently going on, and that is that the president, the Trump administration, Homeland Security, they are now talking about that they may send in, and I use air quotes, law enforcement types into your city, Chicago. And this is a two-part question. Now, the mayor there said, no, this is not going to happen, and she's going to use whatever resources she can muster to make sure, or deploy to make sure what happened in Portland doesn't happen in Chicago. And number two, I just had a discussion, argument with a caller who took exception with the fact that I made the point, we don't need military-styled weapons, battlefield weapons, in our local police department. Can you respond to both of those points?
Well, I think in history is, to me, my dear brother, history is the ultimate teacher of the past. History can project the present and history certainly can kind of predict the future. And as we look at the history of, to me, what Trump is doing, he's picked up, dusted off, and he's a student of the Ku Klux Klan. All right, and this is nothing but a book out of the annals and out of the strategies of the techniques of Ku Klux Klan. Anytime you send, I don't care if they're federal agents, I don't care whatever they are. Anytime you send an armed militia, armed group of basically white men, we have not seen any blacks in this continuously of federal agents. But anytime you send a group of armed bandits, outlaws, no in a uniform, no names, no insignias, no identification, and you just snatch up innocent people or innocent people, and you take them and you take them off to some unrecognized, unknown place. You are really terrorizing a nation. You're terrorizing communities. And for Trump to talk about sending federal agents in Chicago, we won't stand for it. And I think that what Trump is really trying to do, my friend, I think that Trump is really trying to instigate a race war. He wants to have a reaction. If, in fact, these armed agents are deployed into Chicago, there's some guys in Chicago that ain't going to accept that. All right? They're not. If he sends them in, he better not send them into the hardcore, the south side, west side. He better keep them, send them on to the genteel north side. Because if they come in, then I'm not advocating that, but I just know that that's what Trump's game plan. Trump wants to instigate a race war. He want to have black folks fighting white folks, so he can rise up and say, I'm the real grand wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, and I'm the president. You re-elect me. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to play to the fears, to the racial animus that exist among certain white people, and he will do everything and anything to that because he wants to be re-elected at all costs. Now, we don't need in Chicago. We don't need federal agents. We need federal aid. All right, send some money in here to create some summer jobs. That will do more to curtail outbreaks of violence in Chicago than any federal troop could possibly or agent could possibly do. Send aid, don't send federal agents.
That is the point that we were talking about yesterday, that we can talk about this whole deal about how do you have violence in communities. But John Hope Bryant always makes this point, the founder of Operation Hope. He said, you can't show me the level of violence or riots in a community with a credit score of 700 or higher.
Well, see, this is the problem, I think, when we don't begin any analysis, including an economic analysis, when we don't put race at the center, because there are people with high credit scores who live in Chicago who will be harmed. Many of the mothers who are out in Oregon, most of them, in fact, are non-black. They're white, and many of them have excellent credit scores. Didn't stop them from trying to sing a lullaby, hands up, don't shoot, and getting tear gassed by these Klansmen that Trump has recruited. And make no mistake, by evoking the federal troops, by evoking the Customs and Border Patrol and Department of Homeland Security and Federal Protective Service and FBI, U.S. Marshals, Trump has under his control through the Attorney General, Bill Barr, they have a group that is skewered toward white nationalism. So, Bobby Rush is right, and he would know, after all, two of his comrades were slaughtered by local police in 1969, Mark Clark and Fred Hampton, and so he knows. But, again, this strategy is very clear. They are going to either try to steal the upcoming federal election or figure out a way to either nullify it or not have it at all. And let's understand, again, Roland, you've been talking about this. I mean, the Congress, House of Representatives, passed the HERO Act back $3 trillion back in May. McConnell will not bring it to the floor. Steve Mnuchin today talking about people, we won't give people $600 a week. Let's say however much money you make, if you're making $300, we'll give you 70% of that. That's fair. This man got the nerve to talk through his mumble-mouthed, jaw-wired child of privilege behind about something that's fair. But the point is that McConnell won't bring it up on the Senate side, but yet today he introduced a motion to stop discussion and debate over the nomination of William Scott Harvey to be on the federal bench for the Western District of Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, United States District Court. Why is that important in this instance? It's legal to send federal law enforcement into state and local situations if you have probable cause. Now, Bill Barr has said that it's the protests that are triggering this. The protests are triggering this. So Toady Barr, is looking for probable cause to hold up in court. So when Black Lives Matter and everyone else goes to court, they're going to the branch of the government that the White Nationalist Party has worked over the last 3 years to stack. This is why it's so important to register to vote. People say, oh, I don't know about voting. They're all the same parties. Okay, everybody says it's all the same parties. You can tune out now and get ready to get your pump shotguns. And I know you're training for survivalists and stuff. Get ready to go out in the street, because what they are moving toward now is a situation where they don't have to formally declare martial law. And Trump ticked off the stories. His mind is clearly being eaten by whatever disease is eating his brain. But he remembered all the cities. He remembered Detroit. He remembered New York. He said, oh, Oakland is a mess. That's because these are documents that are being talked about over and over in these meetings he's on the periphery of. He doesn't have a good memory for things. Repetition makes that sink in. So to conclude, they are looking for probable cause to send these troops in. They're going to send in the shock troops, who are the most racist of law enforcement in this country. And unlike James Meredith in 1962 at Ole Miss, unlike 1992 in LA, the probable cause that they're going to use or try to use is the rebellion itself. So Bobby Rush is right. It is about race war, and it's also about war against anyone who will stand in the way of the White Nationalist Party.
All right, folks, let's talk about the fact that Joe Biden still has not picked a vice president. He has already said that there are 4 black women who are he considering. Well, we know Senator Kamala Harris, Congresswoman Val Demings, former UN Ambassador Susan Rice, as well as Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. Now, a recent poll finds that 60% of millennial and Generation Z voters who are in key swing states say it's important that Joe Biden choose a black woman to be his running mate. That'll be a little upsetting to the people who've been pushing Senator Elizabeth Warren, as well as those who are pushing Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth and others. Now, if Biden picks a black woman to be his vice president, not only is it predicted that he could be presumptive Democratic nominee amongst young voters, but also white women and other key groups. The poll was done by Brilliant Corners Research and Strategies. And according to the poll, a total of 54% of minority women and a plurality of white women and college-educated women also agree it is important that a black woman be chosen. The poll was done on behalf of Higher Heights. They commissioned the poll. Joining us right now is Cornell Belcher, the president of Brilliant Corners Research and Strategies, and Glenda Carr, president and CEO of Higher Heights. Glenda, I'll start with you first. Why did y'all want this particular poll commissioned?
Yeah, so, Higher Heights for America is a national organization building the collective political power of black women from the voting booth to elected office. So, Roland, you know that black women lead the road to 2020, both as voters and as candidates. And so we thought it was important to back what we've been saying in the conversations we've been having with black women in our network about not only our interest in seeing a black woman as a vice president and the importance of what that this means from a historical perspective, but frankly, at the end of the day, this election is going to be about turnout and turnout outside the margins. And we've been saying that not only does a black woman VP candidate excite black women, data has already pointed to, and races over the last couple of election cycles have actually shown that black women candidates are not only the building blocks to a winning coalition as voters, but they actually are candidates that can build a coalition of voters that are diverse. And we wanted data to back that up. In this poll, in partnership with Cornell Boucher and Karen Finney over at Brilliant Corners, actually points to not only that white women think that he should be looking at a Black woman vice president and running mate, but young voters and minorities as a totality. So that shows that the diversity that Black women bring as voters to the ticket as a candidate, as well as voters. So I'm so excited for Cornell to spend a little time digging into it. At the end of the day, a Black woman will create, I think, the energy for us, not only to Black women to go to the polls, but also organize their networks to the polls. And that includes bringing white women and young people with us.
So, Cornell, you and I have talked a number of times, and you made it perfectly clear to Democrats, stop chasing these white, suburban, conservative women and turn out more of your own people, because otherwise you're going to get your feelings hurt every 4 years. When you look at these numbers here, so break down for us these particular poll numbers and what it reveals specifically as it comes to the need for Biden to pick a Black woman as VP.
Well, thanks so much, Roland. It's good to be with you again. And before I start, again, I just want to give a shout out to Glenda and Higher Heights. And if this is not an organization that you and your followers aren't supporting, please do, because the work they're doing to empower Black women across this country is really important for us now and is really important in the future. So if you're not supporting Higher Heights, do so as soon as possible. That said, Roland, look, it's not even close in the numbers. When we did this across the battleground states, and as you know, all the states are important. But the truth of the matter is, this election is going to be determined in 7 or 8 states the way it always is. And so when you look at those battleground states and look at the voters most important for Biden, sort of take out certain Trump voters because they shouldn't be a part of this conversation. The question isn't even close. By 27 points. Voters in these battleground states agree that it's important for Biden to pick an African American woman compared to a white woman. Only 21% of voters in these battleground states agree that it's important for Joe Biden to pick a white woman, while a 48% plurality in these battleground states agree that it's important for him to pick an African American woman. But beyond that, I think there's also potential backlash if they pick a white woman, because to see it in the data, because 43% of these voters, a plurality of these voters in the battleground states, disagree that it's important for him to pick a white woman, and the intensity around this, on the strongly agree that you should pick an African American woman, is twice of the intensity of it is around whether or not he should pick a white woman. So when you look at the key cohorts in the electorate, particularly, look, you know as well, Roland, the way college women broke in 2018 for Democrats helped Democrats pick up seats all across the country that they hadn't won before, helped make the suburbs blue in a way that they hadn't been before. And when you look at 47% of college women agree that he should pick an African-American woman, compared to only 20% agree that he should pick a white woman. And you look at the young people, where Biden has had, a hard time, and not only Biden, but Hillary also, coming off of Barack Obama, Democrats have had a hard time energizing and growing and sort of energizing and mobilizing young voters. When you look at sort of how broadly and intensely millennials and Gen Zs agree that he should pick an African American woman, I think it would be problematic if he didn't. So not only is it's in the strategic interest, I think, for Democrats to put a diverse ticket out there, a ticket with an African American woman on it.
I was having this conversation with some folks, and I told them this. It is very simple, Glenda and Cornell, that Joe Biden, frankly, doesn't have a choice. And the reason I said, now, granted, he has a choice. But the reason I say Joe Biden doesn't have a choice is because Black people saved his ass. Without Black people, he ain't the nominee. And if he doesn't pick a Black woman to be his VP choice, what he then does is he then solidifies the one thing that black people continue to say is we're tired of being political sharecroppers for Democratic candidates, meaning we save your behind when you're in trouble and then you don't reward black people when it's time. And so I remember when Angela Peoples was on here the other day talking about, she was advancing the idea of Senator Elizabeth Warren. I said, I understand. I said, but I'm telling you right now, it's going to unleash a whole lot of vitriol from black folks saying, oh, so we save your butt and now you can't pick one of us when you have eminently qualified black women to be the choice. Glenda, your thoughts on that?
So 48 years ago, 48 years ago, in the summer of 1972, Shirley Chisholm was preparing to go to the Democratic convention where her name was entered on the floor to be the first African-American, first woman to ever have their name entered into nomination. Fast forward to 48 years, you now have, not only you had a black woman that was running as a president candidate, you also now have, as you mentioned, Roland, not one black woman to pick from, that there is a list that he said for this past week, there's a list of 6 that people have been talking about. If he doesn't choose a black woman, he's going to have to stand up and explain why he did not choose a black woman from a qualified list. I mean, everyone keeps asking me, who is the black woman, right? And I was like, literally any of these women, they all come from different experiences, lived experiences, qualifications, and they all each bring something unique to the ticket and something unique to the administration. So it's going to be a hard day when he doesn't announce a black woman for him to actually explain why he hasn't, and then at the same time determine how you're going to create the momentum you're going to need from this important constituency to not only vote. I think it is clear that African Americans are going to vote in this cycle. There's a question about, and I'll let Cornell speak to this, the difference between 2016 and 2008. And we need to grow those. We need to grow those margins from a voter turnout, and you can't do that without, like, particularly black women organizing their networks.
Cornell.
I think that's spot on, but I want your audience to understand that we're at a really important moment in this country potentially, and we are having conversations about justice and equality, and diversity in the ways that we hadn't. In the polling data, you now see majorities of white voters think racism is a big problem in this country. And go back to 2008, you had a plurality of white voters in the battleground states who actually thought reverse discrimination was a bigger deal than racism. So America's sort of slowly but surely begin to sort of open up and have conversations about the importance of diversity. And I want to say that because an African-American woman is not just simply what black voters want. In these battleground states, it is what a plurality of the most important groups that's going to build Joe Biden's coalition want. So to me, strategically, it makes all the sense in the world. This is what voters want. This is a moment where voters are demanding change. They're looking for more diversity. They're looking for more expansive voices. And black women are leading in that forefront. So to me, strategically, it's a no-brainer.
And then, Roland, and I would also add to that, it is not just this polling data that points to that. It is the recent election. So in 2018, 5 black women were elected to Congress, and 4 of those 5 black women, represent districts that aren't districts of color. Particularly Lauren Underwood. She represents a district that is only 3% black, which means that she overwhelmingly not only won in a Democratic primary, but in a general election with white voters. Lisa Blunt Rochester, who's on his VP selection committee, she's a congressional member that represents Delaware. Delaware only actually has 1 representative, House representative, which means she runs statewide in a state where she has to, she has galvanized a diverse electorate to vote for her not once, but several times.
This is going to be obviously an interesting decision that Joe Biden will have to make. He's going to make it soon. We're almost near the end of July. August is coming up. Democrats will be having their virtual convention, and so we certainly shall see what happens next. Let me also make this clear as well. And this is going to be important too, Glenda and Cornell. Democrats had better put their dollars where their mouth is. And that is, if you want to win, you better turn out your people, which means you better spend money with black media, black-owned media, where black people are. Don't assume that we watch the Ellen show. We also watch other shows with black folks. And that's part of the deal there as well, Cornell, in terms of not only when you talk about how you want to get people out, you better know where we are and how we respond as well. And too often, Democrats have not done that, and they pay the price, and then it's like, damn, we should have done something. And I say, listen to black people, listen to black pollsters, listen to black political analysts, listen to black campaign strategists, because we got a better idea about black people than these white folks. Cornell, final word.
Roland, to be black in America, you have to be able to make your way through multiple communities in a way that some of my white colleagues don't have to. And this is something that you and I have talked about a long time. And I hope to come back on the show because there's a racial reckoning conversation that's going on across this country. And we need to have that racial reckoning conversation also in the progressive community, because there are some things within the progressive community that are also institutionally racist. And we need to have a reckoning about what's happening within the progressive community and within these progressive organizations.
Well, just let me know when you want to do it. We here 5 days a week. We always ready.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Appreciate it. Cornell Belcher, Linda Carr, we appreciate it as well. Let's go to my panel here. Eric, I want to start with you. I mean, the data is the data. And the reality is, when everybody was talking about Senator Amy Klobuchar and was sitting there going, really? Like, really? And then they're throwing out every other name. And so here's the deal. This is not 20 years ago where you say, you don't have an African-American woman who's elected statewide and blah, blah, blah. No. We got United States Senator. We got a former United States Ambassador and National Security Advisor. You got a woman who was a sheriff in Orlando, now a member of Congress. You've got a woman who's the mayor of Atlanta. The excuses are all gone.
Yeah, effectively they are, right? We know very well that data is an extension of currency. Also have an understanding that data is effectively what is used when we talk about the decennial census for businesses to make decisions about where they're going to place their business, if that's a good fit or not. So data has made a very pronounced place in all of our lives. And I think what this also shows in with those battleground states that Dr. Belcher shared is that 3 of those battleground states were Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. We take our minds back to 2016, understanding that it was about 77,000 votes that separated winning from losing. And we know that a lot of that was voter suppression. This data informs that there is an activated group of 18 to 39-year-olds that say that putting a black woman, specifically a black woman, on the ticket would cause them to be more engaged in the vote, which means that they can then catch fire to the people to their right and to their left. It's a win-win. So I think that at this point, particularly as we're battling so many different pieces that this regime has laid to bear on all of its American citizenry, that the Biden campaign, and I hope there's somebody that has brought this data forward to them and somebody that's going to be talking about it as a priority on a daily basis. I think it's imperative that the Biden campaign go ahead and step up and make the announcement about who is going to be the black woman VP choice.
Reese.
Yes, I mean, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. But I definitely want to caution the Biden campaign against picking and choosing which polling they want to go with, because across the board, the most important metric that has consistently come back in favor of black women is the enthusiasm metric. Yes, you are going to get a certain number of people out no matter what, just by default of not being Donald Trump. But that number is just flat out not enough. We see that Vice President Joe Biden is actually running behind Hillary Clinton's percentages with Black voters at this point, and that has been consistent across the polls for months now. The latest one that I've seen from NBC has him at 78%. So Black voters bailed him out in his campaign. They resuscitated his campaign, but Black voters, a good portion of them, are still saying, well, we have a chip that we want to cash in, and that chip is a Black woman VP. And guess what? This is not a matter of just symbolism. Black women have the credentials. Y'all know I've made no bones about Senator Kamala Harris being my pick, and I have argued very fiercely for that. But the bottom line is, it's not just a Senator Kamala Harris issue at this point. He has very publicly dangled multiple Black women, and even as recently as Monday on Joy Reid's show, saying that he has 4 Black women that are in the final stretch. And so it is going to be impossible for him and his campaign or his non-Black woman potential VP pick to explain day in and day out to Black people why all of those women were passed over. And there is no goddamn excuse for it.
Great.
Well, you know, Reese, Eric, and Roland, never underestimate the stupidity of the Democratic Party. And it's unfortunate because the political immaturity of the American Negro continues to strengthen over the years, over the generations. I think if you took everybody's name off of their platform and their policy platform and had Black people picked based on an analysis of the platforms and then unveiled the race of the person they picked, there'd be a lot of people who would pick Elizabeth Warren. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about demographics. We're talking about a photo op, basically, and that's where America's people generally vote, and that's where Black people vote. Like I said, the political maturity of the American Negro has come closer and closer to the general political maturity of everybody in the country. And so I say this: Donald Trump's still leading among white voters. Let's be very clear. Many of the polls show him 55% or more, somewhere around there, with whites with no college degree. So he's trying to get the seniors and the college-educated whites are trying to, they're trying to pick those off. But at the same time, we also see that Trump has made a little inroad into Latinx voters. That's important. And as you say, Reese, you don't see the same percentage supporting Trump in Black communities, but all you need is 2 or 3% in a couple of battleground states if you get it close enough to steal. So as far as I'm concerned, I agree with Cordell. I agree with Glenda, any of them, with one exception. Susan Rice. The Obama administration's foreign policy toward Africa is indefensible. It is anti-African, and we should be ashamed to consider anyone who backed AFRICOM as heavily and did all that damage in Africa. So Susan Rice notwithstanding, in fact, I won't even know why she's even on the short list. And I think maybe that's the Biden administration are trying to get, okay, we get a Black woman, but we need a Black woman who's closer to our neoliberal policies. Boy, if Elizabeth Warren was Black, I'd say put her on the ticket. But since people vote based on what they see, based on what they've read, just pick a Black woman and so we can get this election on and get this thing done and get this Klansman out to office.
But hold up now. I have to respectfully disagree with you, Dr. Carr, because I am very, very, very well researched on Senator Elizabeth Warren and on Senator Kamala Harris. As y'all saw last week, Senator Elizabeth Warren's surrogate wasn't even familiar with her diversity statistics. And so I'm very much policy oriented, and people can go out there and Google 20 for 20 credentials, not cosmetics. I make a completely substantive argument along with Star Jones. We had an hour-and-a-half conversation on this topic. And so, no, it's absolutely not a matter of just putting race over credentials. It's a matter of this is a situation where we can have both.
Pick Kamala. I don't have any problem with it. No. And that sister last week was not prepared to talk about her campaign. So, no, and let me be very clear. I'm not talking about demographics. In other words, what I'm saying, people are voting demographic. They're voting for the color of the candidate. They're not reading policy. You are. I am. Reese is. Eric is. Roland is. Cordell is. Sure. Glenda is. And that tiny group of Black people are going to do it. But many of our people, like you said, there's an enthusiasm piece. Hey, I have no problem.
So, Greg, are you saying that if you stripped the names off of the resumes, policy positions of all the folks there, that if that was the determining factor, what would end up happening is that Warren would get picked over Harris and the others?
I'm not saying she would get picked, but I'm saying she'd be competitive. I'm saying she absolutely would be competitive. And I am saying she would be picked before Susan Rice. Hell yes. No question about it. Now, because as far as I'm concerned, none of them have foreign policy portfolio that is so pro-African and African diaspora that would make me leap to them. But again, we're trying to win an election. And we also have to stay focused. Those federal judges, they're going to be in a position to support whatever the judges say that we want are. Absolutely. And he said he's going to put a black woman on the Supreme Court. That's fine. So, yeah, but all I'm saying is that Warren would be in the mix if race weren't a factor. But race is a factor. So, no, I'm not. No, the only one I would say I had to hold my nose and vote for is Susan Rice. Because, see, I'm old enough to remember what happened in Libya. I'm old enough to remember then all those Africans getting chased out of Libya into Chad and all those other places, and all these Africans getting sold into enslavement. And I put that right at the feet of Barack Hussein Obama and Susan Rice. So, yeah, other than her, I'm good.
Reese, Erica.
Well, can I just say
I'll
that?
say this.
Erica, then Reese. Erica, then Reese.
I'll just say this. Cicely Tyson, in a conversation with Gayle King, it's talked about Black women and our placement in this society and having to look from the fourth rung. It has always stuck with me that we have to look up through the experiences of all other people. But when we are put into positions of power, we lift everyone up because we have that unfortunate view. And I would say that a Black woman being on the ticket is not to placate. It is because Black women are damn well qualified and have actually been doing the work without the position title. So for anyone that would, think that this is just some kind of gesture of goodwill, of good faith, it is really a demand that, as women celebrated the 100-year anniversary of the 19th Amendment passing, that Black women were kind of looking with the stank face and thinking to say that we were part of that movement, but we were not recognized. And so, again, the most qualified person to be at that seat of vice president is the person that actually ran for president, but was really, really drugged and judged very harshly than some of her other counterparts. And that would be Senator Kamala Harris, who has just been doing outstanding work for a very long time. So I just wanted to not be known that, Black women are not like a trophy or a prize, but we are actually the race.
Reese.
I absolutely agree. And speaking of gestures, it's amazing to me how white women like Elizabeth Warren get so much credit for gestures and for rhetoric. When you actually dig beneath the surface, there isn't much substance there. There isn't much receipts in terms of the advocacy that they claim to have suddenly discovered during a presidential campaign. And so that is where we reward white women, we reward white people. And I'm not trying to get on your case, Dr. Carr, but I'm just going to say this: we reward white people for gestures and for rhetoric, even though they haven't backed it up. And yet we look at the Black people and we say, why didn't you do more? Even though what they've done is exponentially more impactful and significant and extensive and in-depth than what any of the white people have done. So absolutely, if you look at a resume-based, evidence-based, data-based, results-based, receipts-based decision-making process, then Kamala Harris, number one, stacks up. But I would still put these other Black women ahead of Elizabeth Warren any day of the week. And the bottom line was Elizabeth Warren was rejected by her own people because she never won a race in 19 out of 19 states. And she placed third or below in each of these states, including in her own home state. So she got some things that she got to work out over there on that part. People saying that they don't want a white woman to be VP as much as they want a Black woman. So go on ahead and do the right thing for a change. We know it never happens when it comes to Black women. Nobody ever does right by the Black woman. But for a change, surprise us and give us what you owe us.
That's right.
As I said, the political immaturity of the American Negro is something that we'll probably be writing about for the next 100 years if there's still a United States. This isn't, please understand, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I think that a Biden-Harris ticket wins. I think a Biden-Rice ticket wins. I think a Biden Black woman ticket wins. But to say that policy wonks are the same as rank and file voters, Joe Biden is the nominee of the Democratic Party because Black people voted our fears. It's very simple.
Right.
Now, and we voted our fears after being rallied in South Carolina by Jim Clyburn, who on this show last week, Roland, said he was standing next to John Lewis and said, I hope Black Lives Matter doesn't, hope they don't take it from us the way that SNCC did. Meaning what? This is the black politician. What you have is movements translating electoral politics to representative race leaders, individuals who we use as a proxy for the interests of our people. That's what, see, Jim Clyburn said that quick, but if you know the history, you understand what he meant by that is we don't want this thing to get too radical. Is what I'm saying. So I'm not critiquing any of those candidates. What I'm saying is, hell, I'd like an opportunity for somebody like Ayanna Pressley. If you're going to put a congresswoman on there, I have nothing against Val Demings. I think Biden Demings wins. But I think, Biden Pressley might win too. In other words, I think that the black woman is interchangeable, and of course I support the black. Are you kidding? No question. Of course, Ida B. Wells. I mean, let's go all the way back to the fight to the 19th. Hell, let's go back to Sojourner Truth in the 1850s. Talking about, ain't I a woman? Of course. This is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the electoral politics of the Democratic Party, which has typically shit on black people, women and men, and certainly black women at the bottom of that pyramid. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%, Erica. What I'm saying is that this is a calculus that is being made by a person and a party that is looking at an electoral map and deciding whether or not they're going to risk finally coming into the 21st century. Because Joe Biden is just as likely to play for that mythical unicorn white voter he's been chasing forever, when, as Cordell and them say, you look at the numbers, you see that, yes, they picked off some suburban whites, particularly women. Yes, they picked off a handful of elders, particularly in places like the background states like Florida and other places. But they've lost among the Latinos. They've lost some ground. They've lost a couple of ticks among black voters, and the energy they will get from a black woman makes perfect sense. But that's the calculus. We're not talking about the politics of who is owed. This is cold-blooded politics. And I think if they're smart, the cold-blooded politics says, pick the black woman. We're not disagreeing. But we got to be, well, I'll end with that because I don't have any hope that the American Negro is going to be any more mature than we are right now. I think we reached our peak maturity probably in the late 60s. It's been going downhill since then.
Anybody want to comment? Okay, my next story. Senator Patrick Leahy introduced a bill that would completely restore the landmark Voting Rights Act of 1965. The bill is named after late civil rights icon Congressman John Lewis. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act aims to overturn the Shelby County versus Holder. The bill is co-sponsored by 47 United States senators. But again, Senator Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, is sitting on the bill that's already been passed by the House, so we'll see what happens. Also, this just in, the Fairfax County, Virginia school district, they have voted to rename Robert E. Lee High School John Lewis High School. And so that decision just came down, that decision out of Fairfax, Virginia. And so that is a very, very, very good thing. Here's the other piece that we got to talk about here, folks, and that is the details are being released in the case of the funeral of Congressman John Lewis. The family will announce it tomorrow. They wanted to wait after the funeral of Reverend C.T. Vivian. That took place today. This was his body. This was a video here of Reverend Vivian's body being carried into the church, and so. It was an amazing funeral. We actually live streamed his funeral on our Roland Martin Unfiltered platform. There were a number of video presentations. They held the funeral to really under an hour or so because out of course, the concern for coronavirus. They practiced safe distancing. And Vice President Joe Biden sent this statement, this video that was played at the funeral.
I'm so honored to be a part of this celebration of Reverend Vivian's long life of purpose and meaning. To the family, from his children to his great-great-great-grandchildren, thank you sincerely for allowing me to join you today. I was an admirer. It is not easy to grieve in public. I know from experience. It's not easy to lose a loved one who means so much to so many, but who meant the most to all of you. And C.T. was truly a remarkable man. A man whose physical courage was exceeded only by his moral courage, whose capacity for love overwhelmed incredible hatreds, whose faith in the power of nonviolence helped forever change our nation. The number of times he faced down being drowned, being beaten, being reviled, only to stand up straight as a ramrod, bloodied but unbent, and declare the truth he saw so clearly. Quote, "You cannot turn your back on the idea of justice," end of quote. You know, it's hard for most people to wrap their heads around this, just what a man he was. But in Illinois, and in Tennessee, and Florida, and Mississippi, in the North and in the South, CT was there fighting to turn us back toward justice. A soldier who refused to raise his fist, a preacher whose voice helped electrify a movement, a leader who inspired generations to join him in the ceaseless march of progress. CT didn't waste a single one of the days God granted him. But we all know that CT's spirit is going to continue to inspire us to fulfill his mission, a mission that remains unfinished. Our fight for racial justice, to state the obvious, is incomplete. And CT's memory now commissions all of us into service to finish the work of perfecting our union, to make sure every person can freely exercise their sacred right to vote, to bring us that much closer to our ideals of equity and justice for all. CT has earned his rest, joining in eternity his beloved wife Octavia and his eldest son Cordy. And for as deep as we are in mourning of his loss, I can't help but think there must be a great celebration in heaven today. Reunion of good and faithful servants entering together into the joy of the Lord. Many of us continue to feel here on earth the hopefulness, the purpose that infused CT throughout his life. May God be with you all during these difficult days.
It will, of course, a very emotional funeral. As we said, it was a lot of safe distancing that was being practiced because of coronavirus. And this is some of the eulogy at today's funeral.
He could challenge you, but he only challenged you to make you better in what you were doing. CT went on to train pastors and college deans. He was a dean down in there. Thank you, Don Rivers, for always being there. It was so easy. Thank you, Don Rivers. You see, you've got a lot of people that will say, but you've been there through thick and thin. You've been there through ups and downs. You've been there when me or even some of his children might not have been there. You've sacrificed your life, and that was the secret to the movement. How much are you willing to sacrifice, and how much are you willing to live? So we all owe you a tremendous debt of gratitude. CT had a good name. Now he's finished. His good name is eternal. And I often wondered, how do we get a good name? We get concerned about this earthly label. CT would want each of us to leave today beginning to work on the real name that you have. The name that when others call your label, they'll think about your real name. Some of us who run around jumping pews singing, "Oh, how I love Jesus," mean as snakes, talking about folks. Every now and then, we ought to understand what CT stood for. The one thing that stood out, and it's been said over and over, and I had to strike it off my list 3 times. CT had a good name, but he married a woman with a great name. He married a woman with a great name. And when Octavia walked in the room, he knew. And he said, I didn't know Octavia's name for the first 2 years. I just called her the wife. He said, Dirty, where's the wife? I said, who's the wife? The wife. Mark said he got baby. But the wife, he knew what it was like. He was a role model for my wife and I. We're into 52 years of marriage now in a world that's coming apart, but because of a team and all of the women who were the foundation for those who were out there on the front line, the Kings and the Abernethys and the Williams and all of the others. It was the women who was standing there strong, taking care of the children and talking about what it meant. They had good names because they knew God, and they knew that what they were doing was just as important as those out on the front. And sometimes the children had to sacrifice, the wives had to sacrifice, but because they did, they brought us to this point now in America. So we cannot negate that. She had a good name. She was determined and resolute, and she supported her. But the real key is not just in Proverbs 21:1, but in Proverbs 22:4, it said that when you humble yourself and when you fear God, He will give you riches, honor, and a long life. We've come today to celebrate a man who's rich. Oh, George, his bank account might not be written that he's got so much in his bank account in his name, but his name is written on the Lamb's Book of Life with all the funds that he ever needs. All he's got to do is call on God. And when he called on God, the riches began to flow. He's been honored by kings and ambassadors all over the world, honored. But now today, only a few days from his 96th birthday, God has given him a long life. He is rich. He has been honored. And now he's received a life. And I say today on behalf of C.T. Vivian, if you want to honor that long life, do what C.T. did when he stood there on the courts there in Dallas. Long life. Do what C.T. did when he stood there on the courts there in Dallas. We have a moral and an ethical obligation today all over this land. If this body has gone to where it's going, then we can keep it alive. We can keep the good name alive by going out and voting. That's what CT would want. He would want us to get up and get out and register and vote and change the nation. Don't shy from that. CT was one that said, my good name is that I said, I want you to vote. I want you to love your neighbors.
Folks, if you want to see the funeral of Reverend C.T. Vivian, simply go to our YouTube channel where we have already archived it. Folks, 10 of Atlanta's black radio stations will come together to educate their listeners on voting and encourage them to register. In between songs, DJs will interview different speakers about the importance of voting. Atlanta is the nation's 8th largest radio market. Last month, more than 3.7 million people listened to the participating radio stations. In addition to voter education, organizers will also include information about the 2020 census to encourage listeners to complete it. That is the kind of stuff I'm talking about, Erica, that's going to be vital when it comes to this election. And these black targeted radio stations, that's what they should be doing, because that's what black newspapers did historically. That's what WVON, the Voice of the Negro, did as well. And I think, frankly, far too many of these radio stations have lost their direction, only focusing on music and the trivial stuff. And that's important. This is vital and needed this year.
Yes, Roland, absolutely. And you've been leading by example. And I think now in this time where people are really seeing that this person that is occupying the White House really is willing to risk any and everything in order to retain power, that the party that he's associated with is essentially become a death cult, that we are actually seeing the impact that it has had and is having on the black community, to include COVID-19. And so when we think about what black radio is again in the black community, where it was more when I was growing up, edutainment, right? So you did get some entertainment, but you also had education. So there was a really good syncing and pairing of both, not one more heavy than the other. And so I applaud this effort and actually hope that they will actually extend it to platforms like yours, so that people are understanding that it's not just at certain times, that this is content that they can actually be made aware to and listen to 7 days a week and at their own replay pleasure.
Reese, again, because of this virus, we are going to have black targeted, black owned media outlets step up and frankly do what they used to do, as opposed to playing games and focus on laughing and giggling and all that silly stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we have to make voting cool again, right? I mean, unfortunately, it's almost becoming a little bit more cool to be contrarian and to have the super woke attitude that it doesn't matter, both parties are the same. And so the onus really is on the candidates, the Democratic Party, and where we can be helpful on our own selves, in particular Black radio and Black media, and getting the message out about what's really at stake here. But we have to give people something to support and something to root for. But even if you are supportive already, even if you are enthusiastic, the bottom line is that voting is a process that we need to be educated on. And you have to go to where people are. A lot of people take for granted things like deadlines. A lot of people take for granted things like how to fill out a ballot. And I would also like to see some awareness about the fact that our election boards, the board of commissioners in most cities, are the ones who are actually executing these elections. And a lot of people don't understand that. And so they don't have the awareness about the fact that these people are holding meetings and they're making decisions about the number of polling places and things like that. And so we have to be engaged now, because before we know it, the election is going to be here, and it's going to be too late at that point to do the kind of outreach that we need to do. This isn't like a polls to the polls Sunday election. This is a multi-month, very extensive campaign that we need to have to get people prepared.
Greg, Dr. King wrote in Chaos of Community, Where Do We Go From Here? There are 4 institutions that are prime position to advance the interests of Black people: the Black church, the Black press, Negro fraternities and sororities, and professional organizations. He specifically called on the Negro press, those words he used, the Negro press, to maintain its militancy and not fall into this conservative mindset. That is what these stations should be doing, using the power of the airwaves to educate people about voting, about the issues.
Absolutely, Roland. And I'm glad to see the Atlanta radio stations coming together, because not only is it the right thing to do, as Reese just said, it's going to be more than souls to the polls. Erica said we got to get our people out. We've got to get this ingrained in our consciousness. But not only must we do that, it is their birthright. I mean, you know, WERD, I'm so glad you mentioned those call letters, Roland, WVON, the voice of the Negro in Chicago. I mean, at the center, Lou Palmer and Conrad Worrell, and of course, you know, all those years that Cliff Kelly, the governor, was on there, I mean, in Chicago. Well, Atlanta led out in that. In 1949, Jesse Blayton, who was a professor at Atlanta University, Old Atlanta University, paid, I think, $50,000 to get the radio station, WERD. And then those few blocks right there near Martin Luther King's birth home, where Martin and Coretta King are buried right now, where they drove C.T. Vivian past, in fact, when they paid tribute yesterday, where Octavia, his wife, Octavia Vivian, an intellectual, helped Ms. King put together the King Center. And of course, Lillian Miles, who was a librarian at Atlanta University campus, Lillian Miles Lewis, John Lewis's wife, she was a librarian at Atlanta University Center. All that work was going on in that area, but what anchored that community was WERD, which was actually in a building that at one time had housed one of Madam C.J. Walker's salons. And it was on that radio station, WERD, that Martin Luther King's sermons were broadcast. That Martin Luther King would go and say, hey, I got a message. We got a rally. We got to get out here and get these people in the streets. He would talk from there. And it was in that building right there next to it where the SNCC headquarters were. Ruby Smith Doris Robinson, whose niece is now the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms. So these Black radio stations in Atlanta are not only doing the right thing in this moment, they are returning to a legacy that Atlanta, in fact, gave birth to in this country. So this is an encouraging moment. This is an encouraging moment for us.
Well, absolutely. And so we are following that. Folks, earlier this week, Congressman Ted Yoho of Florida verbally assaulted Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez outside of the Capitol, calling her out of her name. He attempted to apologize, but this crap really wasn't an apology. I want y'all to watch this.
Thank you, Chairman Conway. Mr. Speaker, I stand before you this morning to address the strife I injected into the already contentious Congress. I have worked with many members in this chamber over the past 4 terms, members on both sides of the aisle, and each of you know that I'm a man of my word. So let me take a moment to address this body. I rise to apologize for the abrupt manner of the conversation I had with my colleague from New York. It is true that we disagree on policies and visions for America, but that does not mean we should be disrespectful. Having been married for 45 years with 2 daughters, I'm very cognizant of my language. The offensive name-calling words attributed to me by the press were never spoken to my colleagues, and if they were construed that way, I apologize for their misunderstanding. As my colleagues know, I'm passionate about those affected by poverty. My wife Carolyn and I started out together at the age of 19 with nothing. We did odd jobs, and we were on food stamps. I know the face of poverty, and for a time it was mine. That is why I know people in this country can still, with all its faults, rise up and succeed and not be encouraged to break the law. I will commit to each of you that I will conduct myself from a place of passion and understanding, that policy and political disagreement be vigorously debated with the knowledge that we approach the problems facing our nation with the betterment of the country in mind and the people we serve. I cannot apologize for my passion or for loving my God, my family, and my country. I yield back.
So you attack her, you call her a bitch, and that's because you're focused on poverty? And you love your God? Really? Today, AOC responded.
About 2 days ago, I was walking up the steps of the Capitol when Representative Yoho suddenly turned a corner, and he was accompanied by Representative Roger Williams, and accosted me on the steps right here in front of our nation's Capitol. I was minding my own business, walking up the steps, and Representative Yoho put his finger in my face. He called me disgusting. He called me crazy. He called me out of my mind. And he called me dangerous. And then he took a few more steps, and after I had recognized his comments as rude, he walked away and said, "I'm rude. You're calling me rude." I took a few steps ahead, and I walked inside and cast my vote, because my constituents send me here each and every day to fight for them and to make sure that they are able to keep a roof over their head, that they're able to feed their families, and that they're able to carry their lives with dignity. I walked back out, and there were reporters in the front of the Capitol, and in front of reporters, Representative Yoho called me, and I quote, "a fucking bitch." These are the words that Representative Yoho levied against a congresswoman, the congresswoman that not only represents New York's 14th congressional district, but every congresswoman and every woman in this country, because all of us have had to deal with this in some form, some way, some shape, at some point in our lives. And I want to be clear that Representative Yoho's comments were not deeply hurtful or piercing to me, because I have worked a working class job. I have waited tables in restaurants. I have ridden the subway. I have walked the streets in New York City. And this kind of language is not new. I have encountered words uttered by Mr. Yoho and men uttering the same words as Mr. Yoho while I was being harassed in restaurants. I have tossed men out of bars that have used language like Mr. Yoho's. And I have encountered this type of harassment riding the subway in New York City. This is not new. And that is the problem. Mr. Yoho was not alone. He was walking shoulder to shoulder with Representative Roger Williams. And that's when we start to see that this issue is not about one incident. It is cultural. It is a culture of lack of impunity, of accepting of violence and violent language against women, and an entire structure of power that supports that. Because not only have I been spoken to disrespectfully, particularly by members of the Republican Party and elected officials in the Republican Party, not just here, but the President of the United States last year told me to go home to another country, with the implication that I don't even belong in America. The governor of Florida, Governor DeSantis, before I even was sworn in, called me a whatever that is. Dehumanizing language is not new. And what we are seeing is that incidents like these are happening in a pattern. This is a pattern of an attitude towards women and dehumanization of others. So while I was not deeply hurt or offended by little comments that are made, when I was reflecting on this, I honestly thought that I was just going to pack it up and go home. It's just another day, right? But then yesterday, Representative Yoho decided to come to the floor of the House of Representatives and make excuses for his behavior. And that I could not let go. I could not allow my nieces, I could not allow the little girls that I go home to, I could not allow victims of verbal abuse and worse to see that excuse, and to see our Congress accept it as legitimate and accept it as an apology, and to accept silence as a form of acceptance. I could not allow that to stand, which is why I'm rising today to raise this point of personal privilege. And I do not need Representative Yoho to apologize to me. Clearly, he does not want to. Clearly, when given the opportunity, he will not. And I will not stay up late at night waiting for an apology from a man who has no remorse over calling women and using abusive language towards women. But what I do have issue with is using women, our wives and daughters, as shields and excuses for poor behavior. Mr. Yoho mentioned that he has a wife and 2 daughters. I am 2 years younger than Mr. Yoho's youngest daughter. I am someone's daughter too. My father, thankfully, is not alive to see how Mr. Yoho treated his daughter. My mother got to see Mr. Yoho's disrespect on the floor of this house towards me on television. And I am here because I have to show my parents that I am their daughter and that they did not raise me to accept abuse from men. Now, what I am here to say is that this harm that Mr. Yoho tried to levy against me was not just an incident directed at me. But when you do that to any woman, what Mr. Yoho did was give permission to other men to do that to his daughters. In using that language in front of the press, he gave permission to use that language against his wife, his daughters, women in his community. And I am here to stand up to say that is not acceptable. I do not care what your views are. It does not matter how much I disagree or how much it incenses me or how much I feel that people are dehumanizing others. I will not do that myself. I will not allow people to change and create hatred in our hearts. And so what I believe is that having a daughter does not make a man decent. Having a wife does not make a decent man. Treating people with dignity and respect makes a decent man. And when a decent man messes up, as we all are bound to do, he tries his best and does apologize. Not to save face, not to win a vote. He apologizes genuinely to repair and acknowledge the harm done so that we can all move on. Lastly, what I want to express to Mr. Yoho is gratitude. I want to thank him for showing the world that you can be a powerful man and accost women. You can have daughters and accost women without remorse. You can be married and accost women. You can take photos and project an image to the world of being a family man and accost women without remorse and with a sense of impunity. It happens every day in this country. It happened here on the steps of our nation's capital. It happens when individuals who hold the highest office in this land admit to hurting women and using this language against all of us. But once again, I thank my colleagues for joining us today. I will reserve the hour of my time, and I will yield to my colleague, Representative Jayapal of Washington. Thank you.
Rishi, that's called an effective way of tearing somebody limb to limb.
She completely and righteously eviscerated him. I mean, if you had a picture of him, his guts were probably all over the House floor. I applaud what Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did there, because so many times we see where the person who is on the receiving end of the abuse is expected to accept a half-assed apology or an apology at all. And I applaud her for saying, take your apology and shove it up your ass, because I'm not falling for it. I'm not going to redeem you by accepting your apology and being gracious towards you when you were so vile and nasty towards me. And then you have the nerve to invoke God and poverty and food stamps as if that is any kind of justification for verbally assaulting a sitting congresswoman as much as these Republicans care about civility, supposedly. He's totally full of it, and I applaud her for completely eviscerating him. And I also want to shout out the other people who stood in solidarity with her. It's actually very heartening today to see the number of women in Congress. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley really gave a really amazing speech as well on this topic, encouraging her daughter Cora and women out there to say that you belong. And, you know, it's just a very uplifting thing. And so I think that I really applaud the way that AOC and Pressley and Ileana Omar and others have really taken this opportunity to shed light on appalling behavior, but also be encouraging and let women know that this is unacceptable and you don't have to take it.
Erica.
Yeah, I agree with Reese. I'm really glad that Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez ethered Ted Yoho in the exact place where he needed to be ethered. And listen, the other thing is just not allowing this whole redemption clause to pay through. You know, for Republicans who used to be or who said that they were the party of God and family, and we've completely seen that mask be shed away in the last few years, for those that have just kind of been in the political space the last few years, you know, this is kind of like par for the course. And to call him out, to use her 9 minutes and to effectively walk through what he issued as an apology wrapped up in food stamps and poverty and his marriage and his daughter, and just say, no, as Reese said, you can take your apology and shove it. And to me, this is kind of more of the force that Democrats need to use as we continue to go to November 3rd, less than 100 days, to really just stand and call a thing, and then advance whatever your platform is, which is the abuse of women largely, which has been demonstrated from their commander-in-chief, the White House occupant.
Greg, to hear her say that she is 2 years younger than Yoho's youngest daughter puts it in perspective, and it's like, how would you feel if somebody called your daughter that?
Brother,
Just thoroughly embarrassed him.
I can't do anything but echo what our sisters have said. It was such a beautiful thing. I was actually listening to it on C-SPAN radio, and I had to pause, man. What Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did today has a lot of layers to it. And by the way, I thought that was Emmanuel Cleaver sitting over. I thought it was Reverend Cleaver sitting over to the left with that full mask on. He ain't trying to catch nothing. He worse than Barbara Lee with them wipes in there. But the thing that blew my mind, see, this is Roland Martin Unfiltered, right? So this is what you ain't gonna get on MSNBC. I don't care who the host is or isn't. We could talk black here. You know what a black person who speaks Spanish is? A black person. You saw Boricua today. That's Puerto Rico. That's the Bronx right there. And over her shoulder, sitting there with that purple mask on, Nydia Velasquez, that abuela was sitting there. Understand, purple is the color of Obai. She is the daughter of Yemaya, the wife of Shango. They came in there and put some on them white boys today. Don't miss what was going on with them Boricua sisters right there. The young girl said, I am someone's daughter. And then she evoked her father. Now, her father, Sergio, is an ancestor. But she said, my mother had to hear that. Blanca Ocasio-Cortez, her mother still walks the earth. Understand the demographics. I know some white folks that kind of hate watch this show. Let me tell y'all something, white nationalists.
But there are some white folks who love the show.
And for those of you who love it,
they've sent money and they've sent me emails. Go ahead.
Y'all keep putting money on it because the country you live in about to look more like those sisters you saw there today. Those are black women. They happened to be dropped off on the island of Puerto Rico, and then they migrated to New York. They're in the Bronx, but those are black women who speak Spanish. So please understand something. And they're growing in numbers. In a minute, white people will be part of the plurality. You probably want to turn off all them other old cable shows and come on over here and watch this, because this is the future. What you saw today was, in addition to getting that man up off her, and his little friends like Tom Cotton, the chinless chump who's trying to introduce some legislature to dictate what's taught in the schools today. I understand, Tom. You got to do that, bruh. Because as Black Thought said, first thing to fall is cats with no chin. But at any rate, what you saw today was not just her bodying them, or as you said, Erica, ethering him. What you saw was she's putting a marker down for the America of the future, because it ain't never coming back to them days. That was a beautiful thing to do. I mean, look, I just love sitting in that. I'm probably going to watch that again tonight.
That's why you know, these other shows, they probably only going to play about 30 or 45 seconds of that. Well, as I always say, when you own your shit, you get to decide what you want to do. I wanted y'all to hear the entire 10 minutes because it was important to hear that sister sit there and lay it out methodically and put him in check. All right, y'all know what time it is.
No charcoal grills are allowed.
Come on, y'all.
I'm white. I got you, Carl.
Please.
Illegally selling water without a permit on my property. Whoa! Hey!
You don't live here. I'm show on the slate. All right, y'all. Another one of these Karens. Check out this white woman here. Brother man is just trying to do his job, y'all. I think this is in Miami, I think. He's just trying to deliver some food to a customer who called the order in. Look at this food.
You know you're mad. Okay. So you're not gonna let me in to deliver this food. I have the number.
Yeah, we don't like pictures.
I mean, I'm just.
Don't point that shit at me.
I'm trying to.
Point that fucking.
I have food I have to deliver to somebody, man.
Don't deliver anything here. We don't want you delivering.
You're not.
We don't want you.
You didn't get the
here.
food.
I don't want you. I don't want you here. I don't want you here at all.
Excuse me, Paul. There's a woman like at the door. My name is Jordan. I'm working in a place.
Who is this?
Excuse me. Can you back away from me, man?
No,
I'm not
this
even.
is my bill. I'm not gonna. Back
I'm just
away
trying
from
to.
you. Who is this? Who's on the speaker?
Hello?
Yeah, who's on the speaker?
Ma'am, can you back?
Who's speaking? I live here in this building. Who is this?
Your food
Who is this?
This is Paul Morfus. I'm in 212. I'm getting a Postmates delivery.
A Postmate delivery in 212. 212 where?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, where do you live, sir?
I live in 1395 Kelton Avenue.
You live in it, or
do my
you
job,
live?
please?
No.
You're not gonna let me do my job.
I'm not letting this man in. Can I bring your food to you? I'm at the entrance
Oh, so
of the
you
building.
want to bring the?
I'm at the entrance to your building.
Who are you? Who is this?
I live here,
All right.
asshole, and I pay rent here.
So I do too. So what are you asking?
I'm asking you to get out of my building because you don't live here.
I'm a black man. I'm trying to deliver. My
I
mom
don't
is
care
in
if
the-
he's a
my
purple
mom,
man.
I'm
He
working
doesn't
for my
live
mom.
here.
Her name is Anna.
Yeah, I don't care
My name
who
is
he's
Jordan.
working for.
I'm
I don't
trying to
care what
deliver
your
your
name
food.
is,
She
sir.
said
I
she
want
doesn't
you out
want
of
me
the
here.
building.
She doesn't want me near here. I just want
I
to
don't
deliver
want
your
him
food.
near
have
here
other
because
orders
I don't
have to
know
deliver.
him, and I don't want
know how
people
you-
buzzing him into my building.
I don't know how to do this for you, but
I don't want
she's
people
like
buzzing
in front of
him
the door.
into a
I can't
security
do
building.
anything right now.
I don't know him. I know everybody in this building. He doesn't live here, and he's not a delivery boy. He had no
delivery
car,
boy.
no bike, nothing.
The car
He is
that I
not
pulled up in, that white.
Domino's.
That's my
he's
white.
Not Pizza Hut.
That's my white car over
He's
there.
not a delivery. He is not a delivery service.
Yeah. Okay.
He didn't get out of a Lyft. He didn't get out of an Uber. He didn't get out of a car, a
So I can't-
Mercedes, a Honda, anything.
Hello?
He's a black
Paul?
guy
Is he
walking
still
around who has
I
a
don't think he's
clicker to
in.
get
I think
into
he's
any
coming
building
down.
he wants to.
Okay.
Yeah, dude, you got codes, dude.
I got codes.
You don't got a brain.
I don't got a brain.
And Generation Z or X, whatever you are, people are dildos.
I'm a
You're not
dildo.
getting in.
I'm not
You
getting
don't
in.
have a key, dude.
Yeah,
You're not
I
gonna
know.
get. I have a
understand.
key. You
That's
don't.
cool.
You can't. Don't
Can you not
film
touch me?
No, can you not film me?
Okay, thank you. So I
Yeah,
can.
I'll be behind
Appreciate
you.
you.
So I don't want you filming me.
What? Can you get away from me?
No, that phone? No, I don't.
Lady,
think that's
can you?
funny,
Because
fucking phone?
you're getting.
Yeah?
You're getting close to
Funny,
me.
At
Can
least
you?
I made you laugh.
I mean, I guess this is really terrible. This is horrible.
hello?
Hi, Paul.
Buzz
Did you want me to?
110.
Excuse
Buzz
me.
110.
Excuse me. Do you want me to leave it down here for
I
you?
don't understand what's going on. Should I just come downstairs?
Please, please. Yeah, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Buzz 110.
No.
Yeah, Buzz
I'm
110.
not doing anything for
Buzz
you. I don't know
110.
you.
Buzz 110.
I'm-
You knew how to buzz him.
By the way, I have this on just so that
curious.
and if you do
wanna hear
something
music?
to me,
You don't want to hear music?
I just
Buzz
want it to
110.
be-
Here, here's
okay.
110. Pound.
I just want to document this.
110.
Just doing my
There.
job.
Let's
It's
see
one
if
of my
it
3
works.
jobs.
They took my name off.
Trying to
Did you know
deliver
that?
food.
They took my name off the directory. They used to have.
So you don't even live here.
I live here, asshole.
So then
I
why'd
lived
they-
here for 7 years,
But
and
they
I
took
don't
your
like
name
your
off?
fucking pig fuck phone either. Okay, how do I do this? Let's see. Press pound.
Alright, I'm gonna step over
110.
here.
Let's see if it buzzes
This
my
is
room.
crazy.
Yeah, what's
Can you-
what's up with
can
you
you
guys?
back
I mean, how old
away
are you?
from me?
27. You're my son.
I'm not
You
talking
play
to you
ball?
anymore. I'm not
He
gonna
plays
talk to you.
basketball.
That's cool.
Yeah, good. This guy's a neighbor.
Cool.
I see him all the time.
That's great.
I've never seen you in my life.
Because I don't live here.
Look at somebody.
I can see you. I wasn't
No,
talking
your
to you.
phone's looking at me. No.
As well.
As well. I
Just
don't
in case
know
you try to
this
call the
person. I don't
cops
know
or
this
something
person.
and tell
I
them
don't
one
know
thing,
that. You
and
guys
it's
and your
not that.
phones, how would you like me to go? You're like this. You can't do anything without him.
Dude,
You carry a little phone around.
Is this-
You can't do anything.
what are you doing right now? Like, why are you
can't
I just don't understand. Like, you're crazy. Okay.
Hey, I have one too. You like Galaxy?
Nah, it's an Android. I don't fuck with Androids.
For free.
Paul?
Yeah, but you're not.
Here,
I'm
Paul.
not letting him
I'm-
buzz.
No, I buzzed.
No, he's not going to be buzzed in.
No, I just want to get my
your
food. I just want to get
Yeah,
my
just
food.
get your food.
Thank you, Paul. Have a good one. Sorry about that.
Now, why haven't I?
Jesus Christ. It's crazy.
Apparently, that's at the Westwood Kelton Towers in Los Angeles, California, Reese.
You know what? Paul's punk ass food would have went right in the trash. Once he brought his monkey mother, you know what? Let me simmer it down a little bit. Once he brought his punk ass downstairs, and the black man's apologizing to him after the black man sat up there and took all that abuse, and he just took, oh, I just want my food. Paul, you ain't shit along with that racist white lady. And I'm telling y'all, I don't know how these black people do it. God bless them. Because I've never had that extended of a conversation with anybody being disrespectful towards me. I understand that you got to get your commission or whatever, but she needed some hands laid on her. And I applaud them, but I would really much rather videos of Karens like her getting stomped out and slapped across her face and cussed out go viral than videos of these docile Negroes who get told off and get harassed and get abused, and they take it and like I said, God bless them, but it's sending the wrong message. It gets my blood pressure up because I would have just slapped her on sight and then dropped the food off, and punk-ass Paul could have got his own food.
Erica, if that's me, hashtag team whip that ass, we'll be showing up.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was clenching my teeth because I'm listening to that child's voice, and it sounds very much so like my 20-something-year-old son. And just thinking about the level of aggression that Black people have to really navigate through every day, for this young man just to be trying to go about his business, he is covering his nose and his mouth because COVID has a disproportionate impact on him, just like it does his Black and brown community as well. And so to have this Karen, who this is really what a Karen is, they demand to know what the hell you're doing, explain yourself. I will weave in and out of the conversation as I please, but you are to follow my order. She also called him a delivery boy. This is that Karen type that has, supposed to be a slur of sorts, but it's not. It's a behavior. It is a mindset. And many of the same folks that led us to this disastrous presidency still very much so hold this posture. I think that I'm glad that he actually filmed it, and bless him for holding his composure, because as a young Black man striking a white woman, we've seen historical outcomes of that. But as a mother, as a Black ass mama, I cannot even imagine, because I can tell you the time that my son, from the time that he was in pre-K to kindergarten, mama has shown up, heels in her hand, hoop earrings in her purse, Vaseline ready to go. So that's really, I think, more of the concerning part of me, is that this is something that these are different wars that our children, all of us, are having to wage with these white women.
I'll say this here, Greg. If you deliver it, you don't owe that white woman no conversation. That's when you say, "Hell, I ain't talking to you." That's when you like, move. You mean nothing to me. This whole, so she know everybody in the building, yet when they call a number, she didn't know who that person was. I mean, these white folks literally are operating like we are in slavery days, where there's a Fugitive Slave Act where I can check your papers.
Yeah. Well, they're patrollers. They've always been patrollers, deputies. They deputy police, all of them. But, Reese, I share that, they need an ass whipping. And Erica, I know, look, we know how you roll. And I see my brother Akinyele Umoja's book back there over your shoulder. We will shoot back. So I know, we know how you roll. So, but at the same time, though, I couldn't help but think. And when you voiced that, sis, it really, really resonated when you said he sounded like your son. Because we know those kind of cats like that. Easygoing, kind of, they not weak. Don't mistake that for weakness. It's just their temperament. And so, it's interesting. We have this Howard Initiative on public policy. We did a webinar today, a second round. We're doing some surveys of Black and Afro, Latin, and Latinx communities on how we're coping with this racial pandemic and the biological pandemic. And, we asked folks, how are they coping, Black folk? Are you using distractions? Are you using substances? Are you reframing? What's your emotional support, humor, acceptance, religion? One of the lowest percentages that Black people are moving to is venting. And Jules Harrell and Ron Hobson, who are two psychologists at Howard, brilliant brothers, were talking on the webinar today. They said, why is that number so low? And they kind of reached a general idea that we don't have the luxury to vent.
Absolutely.
And so Erica, when you're talking about what you had to intervene for your son, that could have gone left, because I think that woman was a little touched, because you heard her going a little loopy, and then she said, "Do you play ball? I mean, are you 27? Oh, am I?" In other words, you got a little Trump in you. Maybe your brain's a worm is eating your brain too. But fortunately, his temperament was such that it was his nature not to just make that move, because that could have ended with sirens and him dead right there in front of that complex. And that's it's a hell of a thing to be Black in America. I agree with James Baldwin, man. Because one of these days, what did Langston Hughes, that little poem he wrote? Look at the Negro, meek and kind. Okay. Beware the day we change our mind. so I mean, but thank God that young man is going home to his family, because that could have went another way if his temperament had been different.
And can I just say though, to be clear, I'm not saying men should go out there and hit women. I'm saying
or women, no question. Sandra Bland,
slap the hell out of her. But right. I think that black people should carry mace. I don't think that there's a gender barrier between mace and somebody who's in your space. Go ahead and spray them. That's not assault. If somebody's in your space, whether it's a man or a woman, you have that right, in my opinion, to go ahead and get rid of them. No conversation, just shh. That's it.
No conversation.
Shh. Spray them like raid.
No conversation. Hey, I'm telling you, I hope they kick her behind out the building. That's what I hope. All right, y'all. Let's go to our final story. A group of former contestants of the television show Survivor on CBS are petitioning for the show to be more diverse and inclusive. The petition sent to Viacom CBS outlines 10 actions for show producers to take, including asking that future casts be made up of at least 30% people of color, and that there's a zero-tolerance policy towards racism during filming. Joining me now to talk about that is Wendell Holland, the 2018 Survivor winner, and Jatia Hart, a Survivor contestant. How y'all doing?
Hello. Doing well. Hey, how's it going?
All right, so you're talking about the folks on the cast, but what did the crew look like? Because part of the issue you also have here is you've got white showrunners, you've got white directors, you got white camera people, you got white audio people, you got white. I mean, I just saw a deal where this movie that Nia Long was in with Omar Epps on Netflix that. Targeting black folks on Netflix, Nia said there were 3 black people on the whole damn crew.
Yeah, that's an issue. I mean, how comfortable would we feel on a desert island and literally looking at the crew and the producers and all of those people, and there aren't many brothers and sisters on the crew. So you're in an intimate confessional where you're trying to speak about what's going on, and sometimes it's hard to communicate that to them or to even feel that they're going to properly tell your story.
So our petition, we actually are talking about that too. We're talking about changing things not only in front of the camera, but behind the camera. And also we want to hold them accountable. So they actually do an okay job of casting African Americans and other people of color. However, they do not do a great job of telling their story. Our stories on Survivor, African Americans, are disproportionately negative. And so we just want to be equally as negative and positive as everybody else.
Well, but this is what you're dealing with here is also, of course, The Bachelor all of a sudden decided to find a black guy for the first time ever. And that was only because of what's been happening lately in this country, because they decided for a long time white is right.
Yeah, so the Bachelor decided to seize the moment, I guess, and it's like, okay, finally you guys did something. And what we're saying is, hey, CBS, hey, Survivor, this is an opportunity. You guys can change the narrative. I know you guys speak to a lot of middle America. That's who watches your show. Why don't you guys...
See, hold on. Do me one favor, please, Wendell.
Yes, sir.
We don't use that phrase on here. We say exactly what it is. When white folks say middle America, they really mean white people. Because here's the deal. There are black people. Chicago is middle America. St. Louis is middle America. That's literally in the middle of America. But they ain't talking about black people. They talking about white people.
Thank you for correcting me, good sir.
Absolutely.
So that's, we don't use the mainstream media white terms on this show. We just say what it is. They appeal to white people in the heartland, in those red states, and they don't give a damn what we think, even though black people, Jatia, watch TV at a far higher number than anybody else out there. So they're like, yeah, y'all gonna watch anyway, we're just gonna keep feeding y'all white characters.
Absolutely. They do not take care with our stories. And now society is calling for them to take care. They want to see different stories. They want to see our stories carried, across. And our stories do carry. So the one example I always use is Beyonce at Beychella, wish I was there. But I mean, she took basically what is essentially what Black people been watching at halftime shows since I can remember going to a HBCU and seeing a halftime show. And she brought it to the masses, and they ate it up. And so you just have to have the narrative and the creativity to bring your story to the market. And they don't care.
Well,
that's why.
Go ahead, Wendell.
I was just going to say, and that's why we're asking for like Black producers, Black people behind the cameras.
Yeah, because also these are jobs. I mean, these are jobs. These are opportunities. But see, I'm gonna use another Beyonce example. When she met with Reebok, she walked in. They had no Black people on their side of the table. She was like, "We out."
Straight up.
And I mean, back when you got some Black people, because if you want to work with me, I'm African American, and you need to respect that.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Greg Carr, I want to pull you in on this conversation here. I mean, what we are seeing, I keep saying this is the reckoning. This is the third Reconstruction. What you have here is, I just saw the story the other day at Hearst Magazine. They're calling out the CEO there for sexist language and also for issues of race within their magazines. We're seeing the same thing at Condé Nast. We've seen Barbara Fedita, who was the second highest ranked person at ABC News, was fired the other day where they validated racist comments that she actually made and behavior as well. We're seeing examinations within all of these media companies. Greg, I've been saying as the vice president for digital for NABJ that we need to see Black folks in all these companies speak up, because this is the moment to challenge whiteness in all levels of this country, because we have been marginalized and ignored for far too long and left out of the economic piece. What they're talking about not only are the people who are on the screen, but behind the screens, we're talking about jobs. We're talking about economic opportunities, well-paid jobs.
Absolutely. So I think this is...
Jatia, 1 second.
Sure.
Greg Carr, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say very quick, and we're talking about synergies. It's not either or. Independent platforms like yours, which harken back to the days when we had independent Black media, Black press, and Black people in these white spaces to bust the door down, because if they want to make money, they're going to have to change demographic. Parenthetically, I saw Beyonce drop that Black King trailer, and I saw her with Robert Farris Thompson's book, Black Gods and Kings, in her hand. They own some old other ish over there in Bay Nation, and I'm here for it. And I'm saying all of it works together. So as you all are pushing Viacom, you know, they let my man Nick Cannon go, but that ain't even hardly over, because what I suspect is going to happen is they're going to have to come back around to the table, because they are going to look up and realize, look, if you don't respect Black people, you about to lose your money, because Black people are what you're marketing to the world, and the demographic in this country is increasingly non-white, and the young white people are watching y'all. So y'all better get y'all's mind right. So more power to y'all. Y'all at Viacom, so we know what kind of fight y'all got to fight. But you got some allies, I think, that will probably allow you to make some progress in very short form, and that includes all of us.
But Jatia, the issue here is not just with Viacom CBS. Mark Burnett produces this show. Has Mark Burnett's company responded to what y'all are putting out?
So our efforts are moving forward. We do have a meeting set up to speak to not only CBS, but people from the production company in Survivor. And so we hope to have outcomes and actual concrete actions. But I think what Greg was saying was summed up best by the meme that's going around. It's a woman who's gotten arrested and she is thinking you about to lose your job. So, I mean, I kind of feel like, yeah, that's the feeling in the street. I mean, we have this systemic racism, and it's housing, it's education, it is everything from school to prison pipeline. It's everything. And one of those facets is media, and it's representation. It's these people who maybe the only Black people they know is what they see on TV, and then that's the police officers of tomorrow. So if they see a character on Survivor who, you know, seems crazy, an African-American, they always seem crazy, then when he goes out there in the streets and he encounters an African-American, unconscious bias is real. That's what's going to kick in. That's what's going to be split second. And it's really the matter of life or death, media and representation. So, yes, it's bigger than Survivor. That's where we'd like to start. But we'd like to see it go from Survivor to CBS to all of media.
Wendell, final comment.
And we're asking for them to, you know, we might have multiple sides to us. We're asking for them to show those multiple sides. Like, instead of focusing on someone being an angry Black man or aggressive or what have you, tell a full story. Show, yes, I can be angry at some moments, but also show that I'm intelligent, also show that I'm motivating my tribe and other things like that, so they can see a whole picture, like they show whole pictures of other castaways.
I'm just gonna give one one piece of advice from my perspective. You're not asking, you're demanding. April 3rd, 1968, if you actually go back and look at that 43-minute and 16-second speech Dr. King gave at Mason Temple, he referenced Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., where he said, we're going to redistribute the pain. He laid out a plan there where he says that if you are not simply doing business with black people, if you're not hiring black people are not going to do business with you. This is not the moment where we have to sit here and be concerned about folks' feelings. This is where we need to be hardcore and say, no, these are our demands. Otherwise, we're going to ratchet this thing up. And so that's what I would lay out. That's the posture I've always taken with a lot of these companies. But this is the moment, the reckoning that we're in, that they need to understand that we ain't playing. We're not playing. We ain't playing. And they better get the message real soon. So certainly keep us abreast of how it goes, okay?
We hope to give you good news.
All right, Wendell Jatia, thank you so very much. All right, folks, please support us at Roland Martin Unfiltered, our Bring the Funk fan club. I want to shout the people who've given us $50 or more. Carrie Morris, Cecilia Newcomb, Cheryl Smith, Dwayne Thomas, George Anderson, Jason Hill, Kevin Kinney, Keisha Ross, Lynette Brown, Maurice Patton, On Deck Printing, Patricia Lester, Patricia Tate, Patriots for Families, Phyllis Banks, Ruben Smith, Robert Harris, Saeed Abdul Hakim, Sharon Rutherford, Sherry Butler, Spurgeon Walker II, Valerie Bly, Yolanda Lynch, Yvette Brooks. And so we certainly appreciate all that you do. This was a note right here from Dwayne Thomas. My name is Dwayne Thomas. I truly love watching your show. You have a great panel on all the time. I'm glad to become a member of this family. Your A5A brother Greg, Dwayne Thomas 06. And so we appreciate all that y'all do. If y'all want to support us, please go to Cash App, $RM Unfiltered, PayPal.me/R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo.com/RM Unfiltered. You can also send a money order, cashier's check to New Vision. Make it out to New Vision, NU Vision Media, Inc., 1625 K Street Northwest, Suite 400, Washington, D.C., 2006. There are more than 7,400 people who are watching us on YouTube right now. There are 6,268. Y'all can give right there on YouTube. Folks, everything ain't a free ride. All the stuff that you see, being able to, the Skype machine to bring in the panelists and the crew and everything else, all this stuff actually costs to be able to pay for the lease here. And so we want your support. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. My man Keenan sent me an email. We are at 10,000. We've crossed the 10,000 barrier. We have 10,243 fan clubs. My goal is for us to have 20,000 fan clubs by the end of the year, paying on average $50 each, which is $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. And so we've got 9,800 to go. So we've got 5 months to hit that goal. So please, we want you to join now. This allows us to remain independent, allows us to be able to cover the things that we need to cover. For instance, this breaking news just in, and that is we're going to be covering this on Monday. Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell announced that Congressman John Lewis will be lying in state in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda. An invitation-only ceremony will be held on Monday at 1:30 p.m. The public is invited to pay their respects on Monday and Tuesday. Given COVID-19, Congressman Lewis will lie in state at the top of the east front steps of the U.S. Capitol for the public viewing, and the public will file past on the East Plaza. Per the Washington, D.C. mayor's order, masks will be required to enter the line, which will begin at the corner of 1st and East Capitol Streets Northeast. Social distancing will also be strictly enforced. On Monday, the public viewing line will begin approximately at 6 p.m. and continue until 10 p.m. On Tuesday, July 28th, the public viewing line will begin at 8 a.m. and continue until 10 p.m. They're asking the public to bring water and umbrellas. And so we just want to give you that news there as well. More details will follow tomorrow from the Lewis family about his funeral in Atlanta and also his hometown of Troy, Alabama. All right, folks. Also, last thing here, a little promotion. Monday, a lot of y'all enjoyed. We streamed the other day my conversation with Jane Elliott. It took place 3 years ago. She's going to be here on Monday's show. Y'all know Jane Elliott brings the funk, and y'all don't want to miss that conversation. Reese, Erica, Greg, always a great pleasure having y'all on the panel. Thank you so very much. I hope they're still there. Y'all, thank you so very much for your contribution. And I will see y'all guys tomorrow right here at Roland Martin Unfiltered.